Hi, everyone. This is Christina Barr, and you're watching Black Tea News. Hello, hello, hello. It's Christina Barr. Welcome to Black Tea News. Today, we're going to be talking about quite so many things, and so many things keep popping on that I want to talk about, but we've only got so much time. Just FYI, the weather is bad right now. So if I lose you, you know why. But thank you guys for joining in today, Black Tea News. Please make sure that you visit the website, blacktnews.com. Check out different articles that I've written. I'm working on one about critical race theory, which I think that you guys are going to really like and want to share. By the time you watch this, it may be done. As a matter of fact, when I'm done with this broadcast, I'm going to finish it. So be on the lookout for that. I will obviously share it on my socials, but it's just regarding how people are trying to do the bait and switch and say, "Oh, it's not in our schools," and it's like, well, you know what? You're not going to walk into your children's classroom and just see them giving a detailed lesson on it. But are people trying to like evangelize it? Sure, absolutely. So that's one thing that's going to be on my website as soon as I finish this broadcast. I'm going to finish working on that. But also check out other articles that I've written. And if you guys do like this broadcast, if you like the videos that I put out, articles that I write, please consider giving a donation to blacktnews.com. You can do that going to blacktnews.com/donate. There's a page that you can do that on the site, or you can also do it right now by PayPal. You can do it by Cash App. You can whip out your phone and just follow the little ticker thing that's scrolling across the screen at the bottom. If you guys would like to do that, I very much appreciate everyone who's willing to do that. That helps with like streaming, running the website, and expansion. So if you guys would like to participate in that way, God bless you. Other ways that you can also support is to buy merchandise. Who doesn't want cool merchandise? I have this cool goat hoodie, got that in different colors. This defeat Joe Biden denounce white supremacy shirt, which the leftists are pretty much all in this in their quest for equity, which just keeps spewing racism, which we're going to talk about today, not specifically the president, but Democrats nonetheless. We got this cool "I voted for Trump" shirt, and all I got was historic peace deals, gas under a certain amount of money. I can't read it from here actually. But it's got a lot going on, and it ends with this lousy t-shirt. So that's a cool shirt if you want to get that. I'm not the victim that you're looking for. You can get that one. I do have different books that you guys can get. This one behind me, Slay Your Fear, How to Overcome a Spirit of Fear. That is like a spiritual nonfiction book, but I do have a lot of fiction books that you guys can check out if you want to support in that sort of way, available on Amazon, but you can go to my website to find that. And I love the "You Are Not That Special" shirt. I totally have that in mugs now. And you can also get stuff with my logo on it. And so there's all kinds of cool stuff you guys can check out. I do not want to delay any further. I don't have a meme today that I would like to start with, but I do have a TikTok that I thought was pretty accurate, dealing with people and their arguments regarding like abortion. And I feel at this point that if you want to have a discussion, you got to be a grown up and just refer to it honestly about what's going on. But I mean, I don't appreciate anything about it, but if people could at least acknowledge and say, yeah, it's a life, but I feel that for certain reasons the mother should supersede, and her willpower should be able to supersede their rights or to life or whatever, which would be horrific, and I don't think that would stick. But that's why they don't want to have that conversation, but just sort of pretending that it's just not alive, or people will say that it's a fetus, as if fetus doesn't mean unborn baby, or I've heard people say it's just not human, like human DNA. So that's really puzzling to me. So here's a little video that I want to share with you all that was on a TikTok that just kind of explains how they react.
Hi, welcome to your first ultrasound appointment. Do you have any questions? Well, yes, actually. I was wondering how far along I am. So I don't want to come across as pedantic, but I think what you meant to ask was, how long has this parasite been incubating inside of me before I was able to consent? Okay. So, like, how old is my baby? Oh, so it looks like you've been hosting your clump of cells for about 8 weeks. Okay, cool. Wait, is that my baby's heartbeat? No. It's not. It's a cardiac flutter. That's what it is.
So I seriously, I don't know how much debate you guys get into with different people on this particular issue of life, but especially on an app like TikTok, people have the most absurd sort of arguments. You just do not find a lot of people on the left who have great arguments, and some of it is because it's an app that trends younger, and I don't know, they just haven't established their thoughts well, I guess. It's just a hot mess. But anyway, let's jump right into a story of the day. People are going nuts. People are going nuts, and I don't know where the end in sight right now is to the whole COVID situation and the masks and the mandates and the vaccines. There was a video I played on Saturday when I was on Let's TikTok about it. I was talking to a friend of mine. Her handle's at Party of Logic on TikTok, and she's made a lot of videos about COVID and the vaccine and so on. And so we were talking a lot about that. And I played a video of a young man who said when this all started, they were washing their hands like crazy. They were staying inside, wearing the mask. They're doing everything that they were told. And now at this point, they're still being told to do a bunch of things. And at one point, they thought they were going to get their lives back, but they're still being controlled so much. So the question is, so he asks, like, are you guys still on board with doing what they say? Or are you guys sick and tired of being sick and tired of having to keep following new rules? So I'm going to make a response to his video and say, baby, I'm so sorry that they just like stole your life away. Stole like more than a year of your life, that they told you that it was going to be 15 days to slow the spread. That I'm sorry that they told you that they just need to flatten the curve, that they just need to make sure that hospitals weren't overwhelmed. And one thing just kept leading to another, that they told you which jobs were essential, that your little business that helps you keep your life afloat, that you can take care of your wife and your kids, and your employees can take care of their families because of your business, that's not essential. And but it's just worth sacrificing, that shouldn't be able to exist anymore. But on the other hand, McDonald's can keep selling Big Macs up the wazoo because they're essential and what they sell is essential. And your little mom and pop shops are going to go, but Amazon's going to increase its wealth by a redonkulous amount, and grocery stores are going to be selling gangbusters as they're running out of toilet paper and disinfectant and all these kind of other things that people need and have been scared to just buy up in crazy amounts. But when Mother's Day comes along, your little floral shop has to die. Like, I'm sorry that you were forced to give up your life so that you couldn't go to the skate park, that they actually filled sand in the skate park, that they took rims off of like basketball hoops so people couldn't play basketball, that they locked up parks, that if you went to church and decided to stay in your cars, that the police officers came up and wrote you tickets for just sitting outside of the churches. I'm sorry that they said that in California that people could keep shooting movies and have live studio audiences, but you couldn't open up a restaurant indoors. And once you transferred everything outside, that they still had to shut you down. But across the street or just right in your, basically in your parking lot, they okayed for caterers to have set up food so they can take care of the people making movies, because that's what makes California go around. I'm sorry that Gavin Newsom treated everyone so poorly while he decided to go out to the French Laundry. I'm sorry that Gretchen Whitmer criticized everyone who decided to protest against her draconian measure lockdowns. Yet when Black Lives Matter stuff started happening, that she was able to go to a protest herself because her daughter really wanted to go. And then she criticized people fleeing to Florida, but she herself went on paying with funds that she wasn't supposed to use, apparently. I'm sorry that Lori Lightfoot told you that you can't get a haircut and have your salon open, but she decided to go ahead and do that herself. I'm sorry that these people continuously lied to you. I'm sorry that Joe Biden and Kamala Harris undermined the vaccine when Trump was president. All these companies, the media tried to make it seem like it wasn't going to happen. And then when it was clear that Biden was going to be the president, not only they're like, oh, we're going to roll out, we're going to start giving doses of hope. They're calling it doses of hope, actually. And if you don't take it now, they are now to the point where they want to mandate it on a federal level. And if you don't get it, you have to do weekly testing, which isn't really going to be very effective to really stop the spread. But that's more of just a measure of, nobody likes having the little thing up their nose like that. They just want to make it so inconvenient that you will break and you will get it. And they're and not only they're doing it on a federal level with federal employees, which the post office unions were like, we're not doing that. So I don't know how that's going to work out. You got people in the military who are very concerned. I've heard people in the military who said that if they can retire, they're getting ready to retire or whatever. They called our nurses heroes, and now they're willing to fire them if they don't take the vaccine. But during the height of the pandemic, some of them had to keep using the same mask and medical supplies, and had to risk exposing themselves. And what they did was heroic. But now you're willing to fire them in the midst of having shortages, and you claim the hospitals are overwhelmed. See, there's just a lot of things that don't make any kind of sense. And I am so sorry that they kept schools locked down, that they isolated children, that people couldn't go see their therapists in person, that they had to do it over Zoom calls. And I'm glad that they get some of that face-to-face like interaction, but they really need to move your body, read your body movements and all sort of other things. It's not enough. It's really not enough. I'm sorry that kids were isolated from their friends. I'm sorry that depression had to skyrocket. I'm sorry that kids couldn't go to school, and where people would pick up social cues to see that maybe they're living in an abusive situation, that sort of interaction without the outside world was cut off. I'm sorry that they wouldn't let you visit your loved ones in the hospital and they had to die alone or over Zoom call. I'm sorry that they put your people into nursing homes. They tried to put my dad in a nursing home. We had to fight them. We're like, give us our dad back, basically. At one point, they even kind of threatened us that, well, it's going to look like you're refusing care, to kind of strong arm us, to make it seem like that, to block the insurance from paying from everything. But we're like, give us our dad back. And we did get him back, thank God. But what they did through all this was just horrific. I'm sorry that if you had a medical emergency to you, but they didn't deem it essential, that you just had to stay home in pain until they allowed you to go in. I'm sorry that you couldn't see your loved ones in nursing homes and they had to keep declining because of the isolation. I am sorry that they did all these things. I think lockdowns, if it's not apparent, we're always immoral. But we extraordinarily pushed it too far. I'm sorry that they trampled your liberties, and I'm sorry that they're still at it and they're still willing to keep walking all over them, to the point now where in other countries, but they're going to do it here in the US and start gearing up to do that if you don't have your show me your papers, if you don't have your vaccine passports, they're not going to let you in certain restaurants and places. But they didn't have a vaccine before they started to open up restaurants. So is it like extraordinarily unsafe now than it was back then. And we've had millions of people who are vaccinated, and we didn't have people who were vaccinated before. They just had natural immunity, or people were just still spreading it. But now you got to take these draconian measures. It's because you want control for whatever reason. For whatever reason, you're so determined now to make young people take it and to force them to do it it's not just you have to take care of these other people. But why are we guilting our children into sacrificing themselves for everyone else? And why did we think it was acceptable to let our children go through all of these things? We're fighting over masking again when we know that the masks that we've been using don't really help. I mean, it says it right on the box. It says it right on the box. I didn't mean to just keep talking about all this in this sort of way, but Dr. Fauci said something the other day that really, really upset me. So I'm going to play a clip of what he said and go from there.
Dr. Fauci, do you agree with Randy Weingarten, the head of the largest teachers union in the country, who came out yesterday and said, yes, teachers should be vaccinated inside schools? Do you think they should be mandated to be vaccinated?
Yeah, I'm going to upset some people on this, but I think we should. I mean, we are in a critical situation now. We've had 615,000 plus deaths, and we are in a major surge now as we're going into the fall, into the school season. This is very serious business. You would wish that people would see why it's so important to get vaccinated. But you're not going to get mandates centrally from the federal government. But when you're talking about local mandates, mandates for schools, for teachers, for universities, for colleges, I'm sorry. I mean, I know people must like to have their individual freedom and not be told to do something, but I think we're in such a serious situation now that under certain circumstances, mandates should be done.
We're in such dire situations that your graphic had to have all the cases lifted, that you had to say the total deaths with COVID, because we know all those people didn't die exclusively just from COVID. And you had to have the whole total number on there, as opposed to saying what the average death right now. Because if you would just be a little bit more honest, just a little bit more honest, the sort of measures that people are taking isn't justified. The sort of measures that we're taking the fear isn't even rational anymore. It's not even rational anymore. It's not even rational. And it wasn't too rational before. That's why I wrote Slay Your Fear. Because I was looking around the world at just the craziness and how people be like, oh, I just want you to stay safe. And I'm like, I'm okay. And they'll be like, I hope you die. Or like, what? Someone once told me, oh, my brother runs a funeral home. I hope I don't see you there. I'm just like, did you curse my life? Did you try to just curse my life right now? Yes, Dr. Fauci, our freedoms are important. I know people like their freedoms. Yes, we do. This is America. Our freedom is essential. It's essential because we have God-given rights that the government can't take from us, shouldn't be able to take from us. And we should be willing to die before we let them have them, just to be frank. But at what point do we say enough is enough? Because I can't believe how much we've just decided to take this whole entire time from the government. I can't believe we gotten this far. I can't believe like there was a case, and I've talked about this and I've written about this on my site, blacktnews.com, where we had the Supreme Court that you had some religious groups suing New York because they allowed other places to open up percentage wise according to their capacity, but the churches still had to have only 50 people regardless of their size. So you could be like a church that could seat 1,000, but they still wouldn't let more people in. So So then they just decided to take a Supreme Court, and then they try to drop it a little bit, and like, well, it doesn't matter anymore because he dropped it. And they're just like, no, you could always just redo the measure. We understand how you guys work. So they went to the Supreme Court, and that decision, it was a clear First Amendment case. In my opinion, it was clear that these people were being treated unfairly, and it should have been all the judges together made this decision, and I think it was 6-3. I think it was 6-3. If it was either 5-4 or 6-3, and either or, that's just too many people who didn't decide to do the right thing. Dr. Fauci is a bureaucrat, and at the end of the day, he's extraordinarily famous. He's getting paid a lot more than he was, but I mean, he's getting really, really paid. He's paid more than any other government employee. And so much of our life we've just put into his hands. Too much power for a man that's openly lied to us repeatedly. And I don't know how much of it is he really believed that we didn't need to wear masks, and we did, and then he changed his mind or whatever. But here's what happened publicly, not based on his emails, just publicly. They came out and said, you don't need to wear masks. That's what he said. And then he said, you do need to wear masks. And then he admitted, well, he said that you don't have to wear masks because, well, we were trying to save the masks for the first responders, for the medical professionals. Oh, so you just thought the rest of us were dying, huh, sir? Okay. Instead of making a heartfelt plea with Americans and saying, hey, can you make your own masks? It's not like super effective, but we really need these special masks for our medical professionals, and they're out there at risk of exposure. So please, make your own mask, and if you can, donate like these good masks to the medical professionals, whatever. That's what they could have did. But no, they lied to the American people. And he's lied repeatedly. They've been wrong about a lot of things. And Jen Psaki said, well, no, we can't foresee a reason for getting rid of him. Well, this man's like, I know you like your freedoms, but we're going to have to, we're so serious. It's so dire right now that you're going to have to just, we're going to have to mandate, and we're going to have to force people to basically to get those vaccines. And we can't technically do it on a federal level. So we just have to keep twisting your arm until you break, is their philosophy. And someone has to say no. Honest to God, my position was just on vaccines and stuff. I'm not someone who reads all the ingredients and all that kind of stuff. My position is normally, I'm more of a wait and see, not wait and see, but just I'd rather not. Like I'm just gonna take my chances. I'm not someone who goes out and gets the flu vaccine and other stuff like that. I would just rather not. It hasn't failed me yet. It could possibly fail me someday. But I've been so far so good, correct? Right? So that was my opinion. Now there's some people who are just like, I don't trust it, and all this other kind of stuff. But to me, what seems like super crazy is the fact that people were treating the I'm gonna wait and see crowd as if they're nuts. They have the most rational position. That is the most rational position, the wait and see crowd. I'm going to see what happens to y'all. Y'all are the test subjects. They ain't finished their test. You are the test subject. They have the most absolute rational opinion regarding all this, and they act like those are the crazy people. And the push and the unnecessary force behind it is just insane. I played a segment of CNN the other day, and they're talking about, well, you're 25 times more likely to die if you don't have the vaccine. 25 times. And when they say 25 times, I mean, I suppose that seems scary, but what 25 times, like 0.01 or 001, something like that, is is very, very small. So you still have like a 99.975% I think was the number of chance of living. So they play a lot of games. Australia I see people on TikTok from Australia just talking about how crazy it is. And there's some people out there who are just like, but we want to get rid of the virus. Well, you guys did a lot of crazy draconian lockdown measures and stuff too. And now you here are again, and you have like a rolling day death total of like 2. And you're willing to shut down everything. And they're like, here's the same way, they're like, don't even talk to people.
We all need to work together. We need to limit our movements. We need to consider whenever we leave our house that anyone with us, anyone we come into contact with could convey the virus. So whilst it is in human nature to engage in conversation with others, to be friendly, unfortunately, this is not the time to do that. So even if you run into your next door neighbour in the shopping centre, in the Coles, whilst you're at Coles or Woolworths or Aldi or any other grocery shop, don't start up a conversation. Now is the time for minimising your interactions with others. Even if you've got a mask, do not think that affords total protection. We want to be absolutely sure that as we go about our daily lives, we do not come into contact with anyone else that would pose a risk.
So don't talk to your friends, don't talk to your neighbors, don't has anyone like really thought about the fact that like flat, slow the spread doesn't just prolong the virus? And what is the goal? Is the goal to just have no COVID in the world at all? Because that's an unrealistic goal. Like in DC, they want people to mask up, and they had like a average of like 0, like the weekly deaths and stuff. The homicide is a much bigger problem in DC. Carjacking teens is a much bigger problem. So we just don't have our priorities straight. And I understand a disease, a pandemic is different than carjacking. You'd think they'd be able to get carjacking a handle on that much easier than a pandemic. And you see how they've failed in that regard. So if that's the case, why do you put so much trust in government that's just like completely incompetent? Our government is completely incompetent on so many different levels. And I think the lesson that we should have learned from all this is they're not designed to take care of us. And that's not their purpose either. And we've given them more power than they deserve and they ought to have, because they're not supposed to be able to function without the consent of the governed. And they decided to make us so fearful. Not me. It wasn't me, but they decided to make people so fearful that we turn against each other. So the people who were scared to death, not only were they scared, they were angry at you for not complying. And then we were like enemies of each other while they got to just seize more power. So this is really about a power thing. Dr. Fauci, yes, we care about our liberties, we care about our freedoms. And no, you can't just have them because you want them. No, you can't just declare how dire a situation is and try to manipulate the data to your narrative while you're out there playing theatrics with your mask, whether you're going to wear a mask, not wear a mask, playing games with Rand Paul because he called you out and you're mad, saying attacking me is attacking the science. You are not science. And science is meant to be questioned, tested, proved. It is not a God. The God gave us our rights, our liberties, our freedoms. And no, just because you ask politely, which you're not really asking politely, we're not just going to surrender them. And I know a lot of people have, but I'm not one of those people. And I went through a long monologue beginning this, talking about a young man who was like, I did everything I was supposed to do, and now you guys just want us to do more. And I feel bad. I genuinely feel bad for people who just kept doing what they said and really wasted a lot of time. I tried to live my life as much as I could the whole entire time. And I lived my life and I did it without apology. Now, obviously, there are things we couldn't do. Movies were closed and other things like that. Restaurants were closed. But I tried to live as normally as I could. And I'm not saying things weren't annoying or hard and etc. But I didn't choose to live in fear. But it's still disgusting that they did so many other people wrong. No, Dr. Fauci, you cannot have our freedoms. We don't like our freedom. We love our freedom. And we're willing to do whatever we can to protect that liberty. And out of everything that we've done throughout this entire pandemic, the damage to our liberties is what will come out to be the worst in the long run, I believe. So let's move on. Let's move on. So there was a school district in Virginia that decided to put some things into place about a gender ideology to basically affirm people's gender ideology. And so the parents got together and they went to the school board meeting and they really tried to block people from getting in. It was raining. They eventually let people in, but it was hard at first. So here's someone who was out in the rain and they told the report about it. So here's a list of some stuff that they were going to do, that they're saying, you have to affirm people's pronouns, and they want people to be able to go to whatever bathroom they want, locker room, so on, and participate in extracurricular activities. And I don't want anyone who is, has gender dysphoria to be ostracized or anything like that. But I don't understand why. I mean, besides you're an evil, authoritative person, I don't understand why people don't have any consideration for biological women in situations like this. Like you don't want a trans woman to feel isolated or left out. So you want them to be able to go into the locker room of their choosing. Well, just girls being with other females, it's uncomfortable. It's really uncomfortable. I did not like changing in the locker rooms in front of all the other girls, and I would go in the stalls. And I don't know if when I got older, and was like going to like Lifetime Fitness and stuff like that, I didn't mind like just kind of changing out in the open and stuff. And I don't know how much that had to do with being a little older or me working out and kind of getting, feeling better about my body as I was working out. I don't know how much play that had to do with one or the other, but the reality of the situation is that young girls can feel isolated and uncomfortable, and putting someone who is a trans woman or someone with dysphoria, and people will claim to be one gender or another without going through years of therapy and so on. They'll just identify in that sort of way, and we're just supposed to affirm it. So you can have someone who's lying about it. a guy who just kind of wants to be predator and get into the girls' locker room, like every sort of trope fantasy that's ever been on any TV show that has obvious some dealings in reality. So parents were concerned about boys going in girls' locker rooms. They're concerned about boys participating in girls' sports and just absolutely dominating them. So they went to a meeting, and they really try not to let these people in. But they went ahead and had their way. They also say that you don't have to not tell the parents about it, but you certainly don't have to tell parents about how their kids are feeling, because they could come from a family that isn't into that, sort of accepting it for whatever reason. But if someone has gender dysphoria, they do have a, you know, will let the parents know so they can properly have their kids diagnosed or whatever. But to just kind of ignore it and let what's society dictate whether they are that, or celebrities, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Twitch, TikTok. So, and instead of going to the parents who've known their kids their whole lives, and maybe them trying to work it out with counseling or, you know, therapy to really affirm whether they do have true gender dysphoria, or if, like in many cases that we are seeing today, where people have other sort of psychological issues, and they just sort of see the trans thing and they're like, maybe I'm that. Well, no, there's other issues that you have, and people who go ahead and transition, then they detransition because they realize, oh my gosh, this wasn't the thing that's going to fulfill me and why I was actually upset with my life. So they don't say you don't have to tell the parents, but they don't say that you that you have to. So it's kind of, to me, it kind of seems like we would, you know, we're not saying you don't have to, but we would prefer if you didn't. So there's a teacher who had enough, and she decided to be brave, and she actually resigned on the spot.
This year, I have the privilege to follow my amazing fourth graders up to fifth, and I have been excited about this all summer. On the other hand, this summer I have struggled with the idea of returning to school, knowing that I'll be working yet again with a school division that, despite its shiny tech and flashy salary, promotes political ideologies that do not square with who I am as a believer in Christ. After reading about your lack of consideration for the growing population of concerned citizens in this division, clearly evidenced by this empty room tonight, where you shut the doors to the public, as well as the emails sent by the superintendent last year, reminding me that a dissenting opinion is not allowed, even to be spoken in my personal life, going so far as to send a form to my colleagues and I, encouraging us to fill it out if we hear one another speaking against the controversial policies being promoted by this school board and adopted in this county. Not only that, but within the last year, I was told in one of my so-called equity trainings that white, Christian, able-bodied females currently have the power in our schools, and that, quote, this has to change. Clearly, you've made your point. You no longer value me or many other teachers you've employed in this county. So since my contract outlines the power that you have over my employment in Loudoun County Public Schools, I thought it necessary to resign in front of you. School board, I quit. I quit your policies. I quit your trainings. And I quit being a cog in a machine that tells me to push highly politicized agendas on our most vulnerable constituents, the children. I will find employment elsewhere. I encourage all parents and staff in this county to flood the private schools.
So yeah, she just quit on the spot. So by the way, that is a fifth grade teacher. That is a fifth grade teacher who felt the need to come forward and talk about this because the school district wanted to force them, the school board wanted to force her to sign a contract promising that you wouldn't snitch on, that she would snitch on other faculty who were caught voicing disagreements with whatever progressive agendas that they have. So I've talked about this before, but I have a friend who signed up to be part of like the sex education like board, kind of like some kind of parental board that was supposed to help shape I guess the curriculum for Detroit schools. And I don't know if it was all of them or just the school that she was a part of. But no, it couldn't have been just a school, but maybe this is the district. But she decided to sign up because she's like, hey, conservatives, we can't just complain about it. We gotta actually do something. So it turned out that, now mind you, in Michigan, the purpose of sex education is to keep people from getting pregnant. But they kept trying to push like LGBT gender ideology sort of stuff on them. And they talked about different things from K all the way up to 12th grade. K all the way up to 12th grade. So this isn't something that's exclusively happening in Virginia. It's something that's happening in Michigan and other places. And a lot of times we're not hearing about things that are going on. I think the pandemic, one good thing that came out of it was a lot of people were paying attention to what was going on Zoom calls and other stuff like that, because parents didn't have all that sort of access. And people are really concerned. So they're talking about it. They're very, very rare, very engaged. And I don't understand the Democrats trying to push certain stuff like critical race theory and all this gender stuff with parents being so concerned for their kids. Because there's a lot of segment of the population that doesn't want to get into politics and stuff like that. They just want to live their lives, take care of their families, and so on. But when you start messing with these families, that's when stuff gets pretty bad. For them politically, because when you get like a mama bear who wants to protect her children, that's when they're going to start seeing some big losses. Especially the suburban mom white woman vote. Oh boy, when Trump was in, not doing his best in the polling or whatever, when people were concerned like midterms and so on, it was because they knew that he didn't quite have that suburban white woman vote on lock. And it was something the RNC and other people, they like had data for it. Like in Michigan, we had data for it. And but if it was mentioned out loud, you'd always have like some suburban mom Republicans like, but I love Trump. And it's like, okay, well, that's regardless, the data's there. I don't care. Like there's people who are kind of uncomfortable with how he is. So anyway, if they had maybe some people who would lure back in their direction, but they keep pushing this kind of stuff where they're going to say, let a boy into your daughter's locker room, or you're a bigot. That's not going to fly with people. Or you keep pushing things like critical race theory. It's just really not going to fly with people. So kudos to her. Hope she finds employment quickly. But to a lot of parents, I know a lot of them are so discouraged about the state of the world right now and education. I'd really just have to say you have to make a decision about what's best for your kids. And if that means that a spouse is one of you is going to have to stay home and homeschool the kids, or you guys got to work it out with your schedule, then you got to do that. If you got to put your kids in private school, you got to put your kids in charter school. If you got to move to a different school district, whatever it is that you have to do. And you can keep them in public school, but you better be diligent about what they are actually learning and take the time to go to these meetings and have your opinions heard, and bring out a group to hear this stuff, because they're not going to care if it's just you. But if you bring out a swarm of people and they are aware that their political futures are riding on what you say, then you're going to be able to accomplish a lot. Like I said, they need the consent of the governed in order to actually govern. And if you're not paying attention after they get in office, they can do pretty much whatever they want. But if you're paying attention and you make it clear that you will not reward them for bad behavior, then you're exercising your power, and then they're quivering in their boots a little bit more. So kudos to this teacher. Kudos to all the parents who went out to this board meeting. I think it was really important. It's the Loudoun County Public Schools. It was the third largest school system in Virginia. So there's a lot of different problems going around the state as of late, well, the country as of late in regards to this issue. Another thing, we got some people expressing their ideology as far as with the critical race theory stuff. So the governor of Oregon decided to sign into law allowing students to graduate without proving they can read, write, or do math, which is like incredible in a bad way, extraordinarily bad way. So Kate Brown dropped the requirement that students demonstrate they have achieved those essential skills by signing Senate Bill 744 into law. She declined again Friday to comment on why she supported suspending the proficiency requirements supported by Oregon Live. Reported at Oregon Live. So this isn't the first time I've seen this in California. They decided to stop listing like Asians as minorities because they didn't like how they were boosting the minority numbers of students doing well. And the reason why they're saying that they're doing this here is because they want to give Oregon's Black, Latino, Latina, Latinx, whatever that is, Indigenous, Asian, Pacific Islander, tribal, and students of color. They want to benefit them, and so they think it's a benefit to not have neutral standards. So when people talk about equality versus equity, this is what's the reality of it. It's making everything worse so one group doesn't do better. Someone tried to claim once, I saw on like TikTok in the comment section, they're like, they think equality is saying everybody's going to get a size 7 pair of shoes, not regardless of the fact that some people don't wear like a size 7. And they're like, equity is finding out what all the sizes are and giving everyone the correct size. I said, no, that's not the reality of equity. Equity is chopping off everyone's feet so they can all fit in the size 7. That is the reality of equity. And we see it in stories like this with a governor who decided that they have to suspend requirements to graduate. And so I was watching the 5 segment on it. And so they made some really good points. And being that if you're a taxpayer, which some of your taxpayer dollars is property tax, but they get a lot of money from the federal government for these schools. So everyone's basically involved in it, you know? Especially since like with the COVID bill, only like a little bit of the money was used for COVID, and then states can use a lot of it however they want. So let's say some of it goes into schools and whatever. So there's a lot on the taxpayer dollars hands, and a lot that they can voice their opinions on. So as a taxpayer, are you okay with funding schools that don't require you to know how to read and write well when you graduate, or how to do math? Like it's bad enough with schools that are supposed to require that, and they don't really, and they just pass kids who can't read or write. It's bad enough seeing that like in the inner cities, but they want to mainstream it across the state where you don't have to know how to read and write well to graduate. That's crazy. That is absolutely bonkers. So you should be mad as a taxpayer, but just if you're a minority out there, you should be offended. And I would be more offended if it wasn't just utterly ridiculous. Like I did very well in school, very, very well, competing against everyone else. I did just as fine, darn it. And a lot of people can, and a lot of people do. But saying we need to suspend the purpose of academics, isn't the purpose of going to school so you can read and write and do math and do all those kinds of things? Why else would you go? What else is the point? Democrats are trying to pass bills that they pay pre-K and community college. But we have people out there who don't even think you should have to read and write to pass high school. That's your taxpayer dollars at work. That's your taxpayer dollars at work. So the problem with equity and critical race theory and all this sort of garbage on the left is they see any sort of disparity and they see racism in it. Like there's no other explanation. There's no account for the individual actions. People are so different. Even like in my family where we have the same parents, had a lot, led up the same teachers, same schools, went to church same amount of times a week. You know, of course we had different friends because we're in like a different group. So there are other variables that are different that can contribute to us being different. But the main things that are different are we're just different people. Like we took personality tests. All my whole family like basically did. And I'm the only one with the personality that I have. Like there's my sister, I have a sister that's like in the same kind of subgroup. And some of them did overlap with each other, but like I have my personality type. I think maybe it was the architect, maybe. I can't remember. Maybe it was that one, but only like what 4% of or 0.4% or something of the people in the world have my type or something like. So I'm just a unique person. Period. So you're gonna think that you're gonna just sweep equity everywhere and be able to fix the problems? No, because if you have to do equity, that means someone is choosing how they rewrite the system to get whatever outcome that they want. And who are you to have that power? Who are you to have that power? You want to know what usually it's the government because you fund this kind of stuff, right? And they're the ones with the power. They're the ones with the authority, with the of government with guns and so on. So they're probably going to be the ones with the authority to end up doing whatever they want to do with the equity. If you want to have someone be able to arrange it. But just look at how they handled the pandemic, deciding which businesses were essential or not. Did that work out well for most people? I don't think it did. It worked well for huge companies like Amazon or big box store chains like Target, sure, Walmart. It worked out great for them. But this sort of stuff isn't meant to work out for everyone. As a matter of fact, it's a resentful philosophy because it assumes neutrality is bad. So it's offensive. It's offensive. Do better. Absolutely need to do better. Absolutely need to do better. Okay. Next story. So if you're aware of the saga with Texas and the Democrats that escaped so they could deny having quorum, they ended up so they didn't want to have to vote for things that were on election integrity, which they call it restricting, and they said they're saving democracy by escaping. So they went to DC and they all flew on the jet, and they had their own beers and so on, maskless, just happy, like, we're saving democracy. Like, you're not, you're just looking like clowns. And a lot of them got COVID. It was like a super spreader event. It's pretty funny. So some of them were quarantined in the hotel, and they're like, send care packages. Like, you send care packages to, I don't know, kids in Kenya living in the slums or something. You send care packages to soldiers in Afghanistan. Like, you don't need to send care packages to morons who fled their state to deny quorum because they didn't want to have to do business from the people who they represent. So they represent people, and Democrats probably voted them in. There's Democrats in Texas and stuff. But they represent other people too. And they're just wasting time. And so in Texas, you can arrest people and force them to have a quorum. So then they tried to get a restraining order on the governor. And there was a judge who, I guess, granted that for some time. But the Supreme Court in Texas shot that down. So they're going to have to probably go and have the quorum and have the vote, and it'll have to proceed. But this was all just a huge publicity stunt. It was a huge waste of time. And for what? Because of all this equity nonsense. Because they don't like the sort of restrictions that were in the voting laws, and they try to make it seem like it's racist, and that's why we need to save democracy. But of course it's crazy. It's not crazy for people to have to prove who they are. Drop boxes shouldn't be a thing. In Michigan, we have a voting day. So a lot of people who want all these extra voting days or mags, they don't have more, whatever. That's just insane to me. And by the way, like the more election days you have, the more expensive elections are. So I think it's really a way to price out people who could be good like state representatives. Like if you're running for president, you probably have raised enough money that you can run an election for a couple of days, like 14 days or whatever it is, early day voting. You can probably do that, especially since people are raising like $1 billion now for the presidency. It's funny, all these people who say they want to get money out of politics, but more money just finds a way to get into politics. But if you're like a person running for state rep on a shoestring budget, it's going to be very hard to run an early election that goes on for like 2 or whole early weeks, because you're going to have people at different places passing out stuff, trying to get those last minute voters and so on. You want people who are going to, I don't know, like the party's going to want to make sure that they have poll challengers and all kind of other stuff. It just makes it a longer, more expensive operation. So I don't like it. And I don't like that there are Republicans that are supportive of the early day stuff. I know people do like it, but if people are going to start doing a lot of any reason absentee, it still doesn't make sense that people need to have the early voting like that either. But I don't know. I think there's more nefarious reasons to it. But these clowns, well, obviously they look like clowns. They look like clowns. They really look like clowns. So I think the last thing I want to address today, because we are getting to like that hour mark, and I don't want to go too much longer. Ben Shapiro was on the Bill Maher show over the weekend, and they talked about it, a couple different things, but he did talk about critical race theory, and he did sum it up pretty well. So I'm going to go ahead and play that.
There's a certain sort of crystallized version of it that is a lot less complex than what critical race theory actually is. But critical race theory essentially argues that racism is baked into all the systems of American society, and that any sort of neutral system is, in fact, a guise for racial power. And so the argument is made by Derek Bell, for example, that Brown versus Board of Education, this is an argument he made in 1991, that Brown versus Board of Education was actually a way for the white community to leverage its own power. It wasn't an attempt to end segregation in public schools. Even things that are purportedly good in terms of race, so long as they uphold these broader systems, things like capitalism or things like the meritocracy, these things are actually just guises for power. And so what that boils down to in sort of practical terms is all disparity equals discrimination. If you can see any stat where black people are underperforming white people, this means the system was set up for the benefit of white people, and that white people have a duty to tear down these systems in order to alleviate the racism that's implicit in those systems. When it comes to schools, what this tends to boil down to is kids who are white have experienced privilege because the system was built for white people, and we have to change the standards. So
Ben laid out a pretty good explanation of what it is, in case you wanted something that was more concise. And I am working, like I said, I am working on an article about it that you'll be able to look at it on blacktnews.com. By the time you see this broadcast, it may already be out there, but obviously I will share it to my social media. But Ben laid out a pretty good explanation, but it's funny to me how many people want to deny his explanation of it. And they want to deny like every explanation of it when people on the right try to explain it at all. Now there's parents and people out there who don't understand it. They just know a little bit about it, the aftermath, or I don't know, that sort of the spirit of it, but they can't really explain what it is. And Ben Shapiro is someone who actually went to law school, learned about it, can quote the tenets from the actual people who were in the field, because you'll have some of these people who are against critical race theory will go on like Joy Reid show or something like that, and they'll try to say like, oh well, that person's not actually a critical race theory person. Like they'll say Robin DiAngelo, she's not really a professor or anyone who's into critical race theory. Well, it says on her website that she's into critical race studies, and okay, but even in like critical race theory books, they talk about spin-offs of critical race theory. So I don't, and they say that it requires activism, and they give examples about different ways of activism in like critical race theory and introduction. So I don't think it's fair to just dismiss Ibram Kendi and Robin DiAngelo, and it's definitely not fair to dismiss them after people ran out and bought her book, White Fragility. People started incorporating her garbage into Fortune 500 companies. It's really not fair to just dismiss Ibram Kendi when teachers unions are the ones who are allowing him to speak, inviting him to come speak. You can't just be like, oh, he's not in part. No, he's part of it. Let's just be real. Netflix broke a deal with him. Jack Dorsey and other people gave him $10 million, like right from rip. So these people have been deeply enriched and ingrained in our society, and there's a lot of unserious people who are taking them seriously and have made them serious. And just because parents are paying attention now, you can't just decide to X them out of existence as if it never mattered in the first place. Well, I'm sorry, it does. But even if we ignore them, you could just go back to like Derek Bell and just be like, oh, he's criticizing integration. He's criticizing integration. That's pretty bad. So yeah. There's lots of not great things about critical race theory. I thought Ben did a good job breaking it down. And he's totally right about how people see any sort of disparity and they want to point to racism rather than maybe there being some sort of reasonable explanation. And we keep seeing this in life repeatedly. And that's why you have governors like in Oregon who are like, well, we're just gonna stop requiring that you know how to read and write to graduate from high school because we want to help the minorities. You're racist. Other way to put it. You're just a racist. So I wanted to leave it at that, but there was other thing that I saw as I was prepping for the show that just happened really quick, and I'm just gonna address it very quickly. So I guess Robin, the Tim Drake, who's one of my favorite Robins. I guess there's not a lot. Maybe he is my favorite Robin. I've always liked Tim Drake. He's exploring his sexuality and he has maybe feelings for his friend, male friend, and they said he's trying to figure out. I mean, he's only been around for 30 years, but I guess he still has time to figure things out. The state of comic books and their insistence of the wokeness, how they kind of have to keep making characters, taking iconic characters that have a history and to change their sexuality, like exploring Tim Drake in this way, like they did it with Bobby Iceman in X-Men. Like people have been reading X-Men for a long time. They're like, well, he's gay. It's like, but you had other characters that you had that were gay and they weren't as popular, but now you want to use the popularity of these other characters, which their sexuality wasn't why they're popular, but now you're trying to just hijack them, basically. They're so obsessed with pushing their ideologies on people or their agendas on people, and it makes me, I'm going to do like a deep dive sort of video about comics. I know not everybody who watches my stuff for politics cares about the comic books and pop culture stuff. Well, you got to care about pop culture a little bit because I talk about it a lot, like cultural issues, but it's personal to me. Like I don't read as much as I used to, but my dad wanted to learn how to read because his father brought him home a comic book. He just saw one like at the store and he said, I think Gino would like this. So he bought one, brought it home to my dad, and he wanted to learn how to read, went to school. He was upset in kindergarten because they don't teach you how to read on the first day. And he learned how to read and he was collecting them. They tried to do the book burning stuff, like when the churches were burning the books. And his mom would not let that happen. I mean, was talking about it, but she saw how determined he was because he said he was like determined to like pack him up and like run away with his comic books. And so she backed off of that. And he collected them throughout the years. He could have bought a Spider-Man Amazing Fantasy. Is it 17 or is it? I think it's 17. But Amazing Fantasy, where Spider-Man first appeared. And he had $300 in his pocket when he went to the comic book store called the Eye of Agamotto in college, but he only had $300 and he would have been wiped out if he bought that. But obviously that book is like worth $1 million now, I guess, depending on the condition of what it is. And but he kept buying books, he kept collecting books, and he raised us on books. Like my older siblings, they went to him to the Calgary in Alberta, Canada, on a missionary trip. They drove up there, and so he said, I got to be praying, so here's boxes of comic books. Like, you guys keep yourself busy. If you're in the front seat, you can pray with me, but if you're in the back seat, like, here, keep yourself busy. So they became accustomed to love comic books on that missionary trip. And eventually I think I got into it because my older siblings were into it, and I just picked up, I think it was a Wolverine comic book, was like a series that they had, and that's when I started to like become consistent in it, and we all start consistently reading together. We started a thing called Gorgeous Geeks, where we go to conventions and we talk about comic books. I have thousands and thousands of comic books in my home. We had Captain America's shield and Thor's hammer before everyone started getting it, because the movies came out and it was mainstream. It was really a big part of our lives, and to know how they're just ruining things with their politics and they can't concentrate on just giving good stories. I from the looks of things, I think Marvel is way worse than DC at it right now, but they're both pretty bad. And I there's a reason why manga is just totally outselling these guys. Because, well, a couple different reasons, but one is access. I think people are more into anime now because of access. I think when I watched Dragon Ball Z on Toonami, they would restart it all the time. and which was crazy and annoying. We hated it, so we started going to our comic book shop and renting tapes. Some of you might be, tapes, what's that? Like, I don't know how old you guys are, but so we'd have to rent tapes, or we'd buy tapes to stay ahead and stuff. But now you can just log into an app on your phone. You can watch it on Tubi, you can watch it on Crunchyroll, you can watch it on YouTube, you can watch it anywhere, basically, anime. But I also think that the fact that they have stories that have beginning, middles, and ends, where you might be reading a DC comic book and they'll reset the universe every couple decades or whatever. But with anime, you read the story about Naruto, and he's a young boy, then he's a teenager, and now he's a man with Boruto and has a family, and they just start off a new story. It has a beginning, it has a middle, it has an end, and they may have a long story, but they are definitely plan a continuation instead of milking everything for all of its worth, like traditional comics do, or the big companies rather. But I think the most important difference right now is that they just want to tell good stories. They have a lot of different variety of things, so you can read about mystery, you can read about the girl fantasy stuff, reverse harems, giant robots. You can read psychological thrillers, or you can read just like fight 'em sort of, shows like Dragon Ball Z and so on. There's a huge amount of variety, but most importantly, these people just care about telling their stories. And Marvel, DC, and especially Marvel right now, they really, really care about just pushing their ideology. They have to hire Ta-Nehisi Coates to write in that Jordan Peterson is a Red Skull, which is ridiculous. They have stories like Safe Space, and whatever New Warrior stuff. People mocked it so mercilessly. Now I can like barely remember it. But that person who wrote that story, now they're failing upwards and going to write a really cool character like Blade, instead of just letting people like that go. I read the story I Am Not Starfire today because I wanted to torture myself, I guess, and it was awful. People are so desperate to inject themselves into these stories instead of respecting these characters and the legacies behind them, to respect the people who wrote them, to respect how they should be, to respect the fans that have invested time and money and love into these characters. And I just feel like these companies just really resent the fans that have been with them through thick and through thin, because they would much rather have you feel whatever way about politics, about sexuality, than just tell the stories about good guys fighting bad guys, doing right for right's sake, and so on. So, and that's why my dad liked comic books for us, because it was just stories about people who wanted to do right for right's sake. Stories like Spider-Man, with great power comes great responsibility. Superman, truth, justice, the American way. Those were values and stuff that he clinged onto, and things that he wanted us to cling onto as well. And my dad still loves, like, he basically will watch a Marvel movie every day. I'm not even kidding you. But I really have no love for these things anymore. And if just thinking about that, if like a me from like 3 years ago, if I was talking to them in the past and said, there's in the future, you're not going to even like care about these things anymore. You're going to like have no love for them because it's going to be so different. I wouldn't be able to believe it. How much of I have emotionally divorced myself from these things. I'm not going to say I'll never see a Marvel movie again, but that's how I feel right now. And I didn't watch Loki and I didn't watch Winter Soldier, and people said that they liked it. My sister said she thought Loki would have been better if it was made by a man. Which is funny. But I'm just kind of dropping out of it, I guess. And because I really feel like everything that was created to make them what they are, they resent that. And they are upset. There's people in the industry have pushed back and are obviously jealous of the success of the Japanese with their mangas and how they are outselling, the big companies consistently now. But they don't fall into the garbage that we fall into in America with the politics. They just want to tell their stories. And it's not that they can't touch on other sort of issues in Japan, any sort of political stories, because I grew up watching Gundam Wing. Like, they can tell political stories, but not at the expense where it's of the story, not at the expense of the story, where they're just basically ruining it and taking it totally out of flow to bash you with some kind of agenda. So I hate the state of comic books right now. I really do. I really, really do. And I don't know when it's going to stop. I think people just need to find alternatives. And I write my own things, and there's other people who write indie stuff. Go support indie stuff. And that's where I'm going to leave with you guys off with today. Please go to blacktnews.com, visit my site, look at things that I've written, different articles. Please share them around. If you enjoyed this episode, enjoy what I'm talking about, make sure that you support the show. You can do so by going to blacktnews.com/donate, or you can do so via PayPal or Cash App. There's that ticker at the bottom that's been scrolling across the screen the whole entire time. So you can donate that way right now with your phone. Or you can go to the website and do it on the website if you like to do it that way. You can check out the different merchandise that I have. I love this goat hoodie. It's so comfortable. I got it in different colors now. And you can get it in just a shirt if you want it that way, because it is, hot outside there right now. But it is a comfortable hoodie. I do love it. Got this Denounce White Supremacy shirt with Joe Biden and a list of the racist stuff that he said on the back. This Trump shirt here, I am not the victim you're looking for. Frederick Douglass, the Constitution is a glorious liberty document. Be better, not better. I love that shirt. We got mugs and so on. You are not that special, and other stuff to check out. No, come out with more stuff all the time. But please, again, go to the website, and if you would like to donate, I'm asking if you can to do so to help expand blacktnews.com. And I appreciate you guys so much. Thank you for liking, subscribing, sharing, and encourage other people to do that as well. God bless you guys, and I will see you